Have you ever treated a patient doing everything right? Clean diet, supplements, regular treatments, but the weight just won't move? If so, it's not a failure, it's terrain dysfunction. In this first video, I'll show you how to reset the system from the top down using 3 key auricular points: laterality, hypothalamus, and point 0. These are your access points for brain regulation, appetite control, and nervous system balance. Once these 3 come back online, everything downstream starts working better. Cravings drop, digestion improves, and patients begin to feel like themselves again. Remember to grab the free course manual below so you can follow along, and I'll show you exactly how to find, treat, and integrate these points into your next session. Let's get started. Hey there, it's Dr. Jeremy, and welcome to part 1 of our series on treating obesity using terrain-based auricular acupuncture. Now, the series is all about shifting away from calorie counting, surface level treatments, and moving into terrain-based system that gets real clinical results. So what I'm going to do over the next parts is I'm going to go through and show you each point in order, and then on that final part I'm going to tell you how to put it all together for our electroacupuncture treatment of obesity. Now we're starting with the most foundational point in the protocol, the laterality point. This is the first point I check and treat in every case, especially in obesity, addiction, and emotional dysregulation. Why? Because if this point is off, the rest of the system is scrambled. You're trying to run software on a broken operating system. So this particular point is treated on the dominant side. So if they're right-handed, you treat it on the right side, and if they're left-handed, you treat it on the left side. Now, 90% of the patients are right-handed, so that's why I'm showing you the right ear here. Now, this is the tragus, and it's actually off the ear in front of the tragus. So you would take your point finder and look in this area here, and if you find it, then you would treat it. Now, the laterality point sits on the dominant ear, and it regulates left-right brain hemisphere integration. When this point is weak or shut down, which it usually is in obesity and addiction, the two halves of the brain aren't really communicating correctly. This shows up in all sorts of clinical patterns, such as emotional volatility, disorganized thinking, difficulty following through, compulsive behaviors, cravings, even clumsiness, and body disconnection. So not only for obesity, but each one of these points that I show you can be used for other purposes. And here's the kicker. Most patients unconsciously seek to reset laterality through food, nicotine, alcohol, or drugs. It's why you'll see the point temporarily disappear on a point finder immediately after eating or smoking. That's not random, that's terrain intelligence at work. Now, why must this laterality point be treated first? Well, if laterality is deficient, the brain is in a disorganized state. You can try to treat appetite, hormones, inflammation, but the nervous system isn't listening. Treating laterality is like plugging in the power strip. It turns the whole system on. And when this point comes back online, patients often feel grounded, focused, less emotionally reactive, calmer, and less likely to self-soothe without food. It creates the neurological foundation for the rest of the protocol to actually work. Now, how do you actually find laterality? Well, here's how I do it. First, I identify the patient's ear, dominant ear, right for right-handed, left for left-handed. Then I use a point finder like a Point Select. It's my favorite because it's bipolar, it's very accurate. It's set in gold only mode because I'm looking for deficiencies only, and I look to confirm the deficiency in this laterality point. I look for a low voltage reading or resistance. So I look on that point finder to see if this point shows up less than 8 on that point finder, because the point finder goes from 0 to 16, and the lower the number, the more deficient the acupoint is. Now, I'm going to be going over, especially in the last part of this series, 3 different techniques to treat this. So basically, you can find the point, needle it with a stainless steel needle, and then apply electrostim to it for 20 minutes. That's method 1. Method 2 is you find the point, you apply 15 seconds of electrical stim using the Pointo probe, and then you make a little mark and leave a tiny gold ear seed. And then the third way is intradermal needles. We're going to get more into that, like I said, in part 10 of this series. So if you're doing a full ear protocol, check for this point first and treat this point first always. Recheck it regularly on follow-up appointments. It can drop out again during stress, after eating, or when the system is overwhelmed. Now, let me give you a quick clinical example. I had a patient who plateaued in her weight loss. She had done all the right things, clean diet, regular movement, full protocol of points, but nothing was really changing. We checked laterality. Sure enough, it was out. I treated it first. Everything shifted. Appetite stabilized, cravings dropped, and emotional clarity came back. Now, this isn't a magical point. It's just about correcting the brain's core operating system so the rest of your inputs can take effect. Now, I like to use a minimum thickness of 36 gauge needle. I like the plastic handles for the ear because they're smaller, the less likely to be pulled out during the treatment. I use paper tape to apply the clip and the needle to the ear so that the patient can move around during the treatment, and I treat them for 20 minutes. And then you're like, well, what frequency do I use? Well, if you don't know what frequency you should use, you can use 9 or 10 hertz. That's the mesoderm. But what I'm going to be doing is showing you the Noget treatment frequency zones. Now you can see this laterality point is not actually in a Noget zone. It's not actually an auricular point, although we are calling it an auricular point. I like to use 9.12 or this mesoderm frequency for this point here. So if you take nothing else from this series, remember this: start with laterality. It's not complicated, but it will change your results for any other treatment you may be doing, not just obesity. Today we're moving into a central control hub of the entire endocrine and metabolic system, the hypothalamus point. Now this one's big. It governs everything from appetite and satiety to thermoregulation, circadian rhythm, and even emotional drive to eat. And when you treat the hypothalamus correctly, everything downstream starts to shift. So what is the hypothalamus? Why does it matter in obesity? Well, the hypothalamus is the brain's master thermostat. It decides when you're hungry, when you're full, when to store fat, when to burn it, and how much energy to spend throughout the day. It also governs your HPA axis, which means it regulates the stress response hormone cascade, and yes, how your body handles insulin and blood sugar. And many of our patients have diabetes, right? In obese patients, the hypothalamus usually is out of calibration. Appetite's dysregulated, satiety is delayed, and the internal stop signals are not firing correctly. So when someone says, I'm always hungry, or I eat and don't feel full, it's not a willpower issue. It's terrain dysfunction, and the hypothalamus is almost always involved. Now, why is the hypothalamus a core point in the terrain-based obesity protocols? Well, you can think of the hypothalamus point as a reset for the body's appetite and energy thermostat. When treated correctly, you'll often see decreased emotional and compulsive eating, improved satiety, patients report getting full faster,
better sleep since it governs circadian rhythm, more consistent energy throughout the day, and sometimes spontaneous shifts in cravings. Now, it isn't a silver bullet, but when paired with that laterality point from part 1, it becomes a neuroendocrine reprogramming strategy. You're not just reducing appetite, you're rewiring the signal itself. Now, where to find it and how to treat it? Well, if you notice, it's tucked in on the concha wall here, right? So it's on the right ear in most patients because of dominance. It's near point 0 and the inner ear reflex zones. And again, you're going to use your point finder to go to this local area here and find the most efficient point. Now, again, I'm only training you how to treat gold points because in this system, we only treat deficiencies. If you're using electricity start low, patients may feel this one a little bit stronger than the rest due to the deep brain connection. And again, treat it early in the session. I usually check for laterality. If I find it, then I treat that. If I don't find it, I move on to hypothalamus. If I find it, I treat it. If I don't, then I move on to what I'm going to be teaching you for the rest of the protocol. Now, here's how to locate this point the easy way. Now, this, you make so on this bulge here, when you're looking from this angle down on top of it, you create a triangle. And the base of the triangle is from here to here, from the occiput to here, base of a triangle. Now the other sides of the triangle go down the concha wall, and form a point at the junction of the concha floor and concha wall. And then it's halfway on this left angle of this triangle here. And if you're using a point to select, you'll be able to locate it. And then what frequency would you want to use for this? Let's turn on our Noget frequency here. And this is recommending 73 hertz because of this brain zone. And I do like 73 hertz for this hypothalamus point. Now, when you might use this alone or repeatedly? Well, I've had cases where hypothalamus alone made major changes. A patient once came in who had tried multiple weight loss programs, medications, cleanses, you name it. She was always hungry and always fatigued. Well, we ran diagnostics and treated just laterally and hypothalamus. Within 1 week, her appetite normalized, her cravings dropped, and she said, for the first time in years, I actually forgot to eat. That's when you know the system is correcting itself. So when would you want to repeat it and what to watch for? Well, this point may need to be rechecked each visit, especially if the patient's under stress or has irregular eating habits. If the point stops showing up on your point to select, then you don't need to treat it anymore. If you're using permanent needles or gold seeds, it's a great point to retain over time for regulatory support, and watch for signs of undertreatment or overtreatment. These could be potential dizziness, blood sugar drops, or disrupted sleep. Now, clinical pro tip, pair this hypothalamus point with the point 0 and laterality point. You've got the neurometabolic triad. Now, we haven't gone over the point 0 point yet, but stay tuned and we'll be doing that soon. This is where we start seeing nervous system, hormonal, and emotional regulation happening all at once. And that's how you treat obesity at the terrain level, not with diets and discipline only, but by restoring the body's internal command center. Now, the hypothalamus point is one of the most powerful tools we have for regulating appetite and energy flow in obesity and dysregulated patients. They were covering a deceptively simple but absolutely essential point in the protocol, point 0, which is also known as the celiac plexus point. Now, if laterality is the reset for the brain and the hypothalamus is the reset for appetite, then point 0 is the reset for the entire autonomic nervous system. This is one of the first points I ever treat and one of the last points I will ever forget. So what is point 0? Why does it matter? Well, point 0 is located near the anatomical position of the celiac plexus, a bundle of nerves sitting at the center of the torso. And in the body, the plexus acts as a switching station between the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. So when you stimulate point zero on the ear, you're tapping into that regulatory network. You're telling the body, balance, ground, reset, shift into healing mode. So why does this matter in obesity? Because nearly every obese patient is living in a state of sympathetic dominance. Their nervous system is stuck in fight or flight. That means poor digestion, poor circulation, chronic inflammation, poor tissue oxygenation, and an inability to enter the parasympathetic rest and restore state where actual weight loss and healing occur. And you can't burn fat in fight or flight. It's not a hormonal issue, it's a terrain issue. Now, how it works physiologically. Well, point zero helps normalize activity between the vagus nerve and parasympathetic input, the HPA axis and central hormonal pathways, digestive motility, appetite, timing, and even gut-brain signaling. It also tends to lower inflammation markers and calm hyperactive reactivity through the nervous system. One thing I want to show you that's really cool is point zero located here, right? I'm sure many of you already know where to locate it, is the same point as REN 8 because all the acupuncture channels and points are on the ear as well. Right? All the channels and points of the acupuncture channel system are also on the ear, and point zero relates to REN 8 of the body. Now, this is especially helpful in patients who are always tense, overthinkers, sleep poorly, feel wired but tired, or emotionally reactive. In other words, your classic high cortisol, inflamed, sympathetic dominant terrain. Now, it's usually found on the dominant ear, which is the right ear in right-handed patients, left ear in left-handed patients, and it's just above the ear canal in the concha bowl, right about here. Use your point finder to confirm it. As always, look for low resistance, and I like to look for when that machine drops below 8, that point of select. Now, here's the protocol. Always pair point zero with hypothalamus and laterality if you find those points are active. And for high anxiety patients, retain this point over multiple sessions using a gold seed or an intradermal needle. Now, what kind of frequency would you want to use? Well, let's flip on Noget, and you will see it is in the mesoderm area of the ear. This yellow 9.12 hertz or 10 hertz. It doesn't have to be exact. Now, I treated a patient recently who'd been stuck in weight loss resistance for years. She wasn't overeating, she wasn't even craving sugar anymore, but she wasn't losing a pound. I checked her terrain, she was sympathetic dominant, sleep was busted up, digestion sluggish, and she had a high resting heart rate. Well, I added point zero to her protocol and paired it with I think it was Laterality Point. That night, she slept for 9 hours straight. Her digestion started moving again. Her energy returned. 3 sessions later, her terrain had shifted and the weight finally started coming off. So you don't need to force change with the system. You support the body's intelligence and the change begins to happen naturally. It's easy to do when you're following the protocol, but you're letting something like the point of select really tell you that, yes, this point is deficient in electricity and that it needs to be treated, right? So here's some pro tips. I call this the reset trifecta. It's point zero plus hypothalamus plus laterality. If you do nothing else in your obesity protocol, do these 3. They regulate the entire nervous system, brain, and hormonal command center. They create a clean slate that makes every other point more effective. So that's point zero, a deceptively simple point with deep systemic effects.
Now you've seen how laterality, hypothalamus, and point zero act like reset switches, bringing the brain, body, and nervous system back into alignment. In part 2, we're going to go deeper into the emotional circuitry, points like aggression, frustration, and depression, and how they silently drive compulsive eating, metabolic resistance, and treatment plateaus. This is where the real healing begins for patients who can't stop eating or feel completely stuck emotionally, hormonally, or physically. Part 2 drops soon, and it's where everything starts to shift on a deeper level. Make sure you watch all 3 parts, because at the end, I'll be opening a limited time opportunity to join my PRT Auricular Medicine Intensive at a special rate. If you're serious about electric medicine, you don't want to miss it.